And I'm just going to share Fiona's just some information so you know who our keynote speaker is today. So Fiona Spence, so lovely to have you speak with us today. Fiona is a transformational coach, trainer and writer. She has a company, Fiona Spence, training and mindset coaching. She's a rapid results coach and uses her vast experience and knowledge of neuroscience, business, mindfulness, and martial arts to help people get the results they want in business and in life. Now, Fiona is not originally from Australia. She's from the UK. She immigrated to Australia 16 years ago with her lovely family. She's got two gorgeous kids. Actually, Fiona, I couldn't tell whether they're boys or girls because they're really gorgeous with long hair, and I think they could be boys. I'm not sure. I saw them yesterday.
They are surf duty boys.
They're surf duty boys. And they, luckily for Fiona, they helped her with her technology because we weren't sure we would be able to hear her today. Fiona, she does podcasts, she does Facebook Lives. I was introduced to Fiona by another networking friend of mine, and I put the shout out for a mindset coach for my group. I run a Be Healthy program, and people making changes to their diet and their health. And I thought, gosh, what am I missing? I'm missing a mindset coach. So I was introduced to Fiona, and I'm so glad I was, because she's just got such great energy and a really interesting information. I popped into some of her podcasts and Facebook Lives, and I'm like, wow, this woman's interesting. So today, Fiona, I'll stop sharing now, and we can put that up a bit later, so you can take over. Bear with me that I can get out of here. Oh, Marcel, I'm stuck. Because I've got a big screen on, I'm trying to get out of the big screen. Is that stop sharing? No, I'll stop sharing now. There we are. So we can put ourselves on speaker view so we can see Fiona when I hand over to you, Fiona, because she's going to do some, it's not just sit and talking. She's going to do some activities. So
she's going to stand and talk.
Stand and talk. And so I'm going to hand it over to you, Fiona, to tell us what, talk about the use of martial arts and how that's helped you in your journey. Yes?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, I'm Fiona Spence. I am a rapid results mindset coach, and I absolutely do have a passion for martial arts. And today, I know we're in a sort of a semi-lockdown, aren't we? And the borders are closed, but I'm going to take you on a little journey. We're going to travel we'll go into the city. We'll start in the city. We'll maybe pop over it. No, we'll pop into the UK. We'll go to the city. We'll go back to the UK, maybe to the north of England. We'll start in London, go to the north, come back again, fly out to New Zealand, and then we'll land back down here to finish. How's that sound? Now, this is going to be weird because it's one of those, you just sort of do thumbsy upsies, and I can see myself, so I don't know what's going on there. In fact, if I'm really clever, I could probably find a button that lets me see all of you at the same time. Possibly not. Oh, well, that was worth a try. I think I've broken it. Never mind. All right. So my love of martial arts, it began about 40 years ago. I know, I don't look old enough. And it was about 40 years ago. And I remember I was in London, and I had my first judo lesson, and it was in a strange big domed building, and it had green mats on the floor, and I'd had a fabulous class, and I was very excited. And I said to my instructor, I said, have you ever used this in the real world? And he said, yes, mostly on my bank manager. And I was so disappointed because that was not what I was expecting to hear. But over the years, I started to understand what he meant. Because martial arts, yes, it's about the body, but it's very much about the mind. Now, I don't know if you're like me, but if I commit to something, I really, really commit. And so very soon I was entering competitions, I was winning medals, I won national titles, and I ended up with my own clubs. And on the outside, I seemed really confident, a winner, a gold medalist. But on the inside, very often, I didn't feel the same way. And this is because as a child, I'd experienced emotional abuse within my family. growing up, I entered into some emotional adult relationships that were abusive again. And less than 10 years ago, I found myself being bullied at work, workplace bullying, again, another form of emotional abuse. And I just remember clearly standing in an office in the city centre, and I was speaking, I was starting to speak, and my boss shushed me. He just went, shh, shh. And that doesn't sound too bad on its own, but the preceding weeks and months leading up to it, he'd shush me a lot. He'd shush me behind closed doors. And each time he did it, I felt my confidence drop a little bit more. And I started to doubt that what I had to say had any value. And then I started to doubt that I had any value. So when he did it to me in this meeting in front of my peers and his boss, I knew I need to make a decision, and something had to change. I could carry on as I was, or I could turn it around and I could go back to being that confident girl and confident woman now. And so I took action. And I had this kind of epiphany light bulb moment. You ever have one of those aha moments, you know, you're like, ah. And I remembered many years before where I had been teaching martial arts in the north of England. This is the journey, here we go. So we're in the north of England, and you think it's cold today. Try learning martial arts in the middle of winter in the north of England. Now, it was in Sheffield, and the Sheffielders are tough. These are tough people. It's an ex sort of steel mining kind of environment. They are what they call rock hard, they call themselves. And this was the hardest club in England because this was a kids club of preteens. So you can imagine the level here. And they were noisy, they were enthusiastic. And there was one little kid, there's one in every class. He was short, but what he made up for what he lacked in stature, he made up for in noise and enthusiasm and complete inability to follow any instructions whatsoever. So I'm going around and I check the kids and I say to him, if you do it like that, you are going to break your nose. And I left him for a bit, and of course about 3 minutes later there's a hullabaloo, and I see this little angel running towards me with the Niagara Falls of nosebleeds. And the cheeky sausage has a grin from ear to ear because these are tough kids and a nosebleed is nothing new to them. And he looks at me and he said, "Sensei," which is just Japanese for teacher. He said, "Sensei, you were right." Well, it sounded a bit more like "Sensei, you were right," but you get the idea. And he had a little think and he said, "Next time I'm going to step out the way." It's brilliant advice. And so back in Brisbane, in this office where I'm feeling my confidence about to drain out of me, and I make that decision, I take action, and I realize what I need to do is take a mental step out the way, and I need to let that shush go right past me. And I do. I take a mental step out the way, and I stand there. And I said something along the lines of, every time you shush me, it makes me feel like what I have to say is of no value. So please, let me continue. Ooh, nobody spoke back to this man, it turns out, because I could see the metaphorical jaws dropping of all my peers around the table, because it turned out it wasn't just me that he'd been bullying. But it was an incredibly empowering moment. And I realized then that there's this huge problem in society with the way that people see things. And I realized that when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And that is why I decided to dedicate my life to learning how to rewire my brain and helping other people to rewire their brains too, so that they could change their lives. And that's how I became a mindset coach. Now, I love martial arts. So therefore, when lockdown occurred, I decided that not only would I continue doing martial arts, even though we couldn't meet in our clubs, but I would get better, because that's the sort of girl I am. So I thought, well, look, the best way for me to do that is to learn a weapon, because I can practice it on my own. And I decided I would learn the sword. And I thought, okay, who can I ask to teach me the sword? Who is the best martial artist I know? Well, it's a man called Tony Schaffelberger in New Zealand. There's our next jump. So Tony has a company called Quiet Confidence. And he is, without a doubt, one of the best martial artists in New Zealand. But I had a feeling, even though Tony's this incredible guy, that he would teach me the sword, because just a few months beforehand, I'd actually helped Tony in a coaching session. He'd had an issue, can you believe it? Despite having this company, Quiet Confidence, he had a little crisis of confidence. And I see this a lot. The more successful people are, the bigger the doubts they have and the self-doubts. And very often, as was the case in Tony's situation, they stem from childhood. Now, confidentiality is everything to a coach. It's very, very important. And the reason I can talk about Tony is that he did give me a testimonial on LinkedIn. So it's all right for me to discuss what he's shared in LinkedIn. If you want to see it, actually, please do just connect with me on LinkedIn anyway. Just find me on there, Fiona Jane or Fiona J Spence I'll be, and I'll put a link up or something in the chat so you can find me, because I'd love to learn more about all of you. So anyway, I had this amazing session with Tony, and he let go of this problem like that in one session. So therefore, when I called him, he was like, yes, of course, I'll teach you sword. So it just so happens that I brought one along today. It's an incredibly lethal piece of wood. This is about what I'm allowed to train with at the moment. You start off with a nice light piece of wood before you go on to the real one. I've once used a real one. It's very, very scary indeed. So they're really sharp. So when I had my lesson with Tony, I realized that there were a lot of parallels to life. And I'm going to share you the lessons today that I like to take out of learning sword and put into life. And you can use these lessons in life. You can use these lessons in your business. So first of all, Tony showed me how to hold the sword. And I'm going to play a bit with my screen here as we go, just to get a good angle for you. He showed me how to hold the sword. So let's jump ahead, and I'm holding the sword. And he said, okay, Fee, so we're ready now to lift it. I'm like, oh, great. So I'm excited now because I'm going to lift the sword. But he said, just a second, just before you do that, press pause. He said, imagine this bit of your hand here. And he said, just feel it. He said, feel that bit of the hand and just feel it on the handle and just feel the weight of it on the handle and tell me what happens. So I took the sword and I felt the weight of that bit of my hand on the handle. I said, Tony, the tip is moving. The tip of the sword is moving. He said, that's right. That is the very beginning of the cut. And the parallel here to life is that the smallest action can create a phenomenally huge result. And sometimes you get so overwhelmed, the whole thing seems so big, you know, the project that you never get started on is just so overwhelming that if you can break it down into the smallest possible step that you can take, you'll find that you do get started. You know, you just send the text, or you pick up the notebook and you write my life's memoirs, you know, whatever it is you want, you just take that little tiny step and now you've got some momentum, you're starting to move. So then he said, okay, Fee, all right, off you go, lift the sword. So I remembered the pressure, the tip lifted, and I lifted up the sword. And I've got a low ceiling here, so if you hear clanging and banging, it's ceiling fans and the ceiling falling down. But I lifted the sword, and he said, Fee, press pause. Then he said, what did you lift the sword with? I said, well, you know, the handle. So I think I was lifting it from the handle. And he said, well, it looked to me like you were sort of lifting it from the middle. I go, oh, okay. And then I go, I know what he wants here. He wants me to lift it from the tip. All right. So what he's saying here is I've got to begin with the end in mind. Because so often, you know, we think about the beginning of something, or we think about the middle of something, but we forget to think it all the way through to the very, very end. So he's saying to me, begin with the end in mind. Begin with the end in mind. But there was another problem. There was another problem, because he said, and also what you're doing is you're very much lifting with your arms. He said, you're going to get really tired arms. Really tired arms. If you lift the sword with your arms, you do 100 cuts. I thought, well, what am I supposed to lift the sword with? He said, Fee, try this. I said, all right. Slide the weight across your feet, just to the front. Just move the weight and see what happens. I thought, okay, I did. Move the weight. Wow, the sword is moving. He said, yes, now you are using your body to move the sword. All right. And this is all to do with when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Because I thought you lifted a sword like this, but you don't. You lift it by moving completely differently. So I think the parallel here with business is we often do things the same way because that's how we've always done it. Or we make an assumption we should do something because that's how everyone else does it. But if you can just change the way you look at it and ask yourself, how might I do this differently? How might I do this differently? You may find, as I did, you get a more efficient result, a more effective result. You actually have better control. You save energy just by asking that question. So there we go. The sword is now up and I'm ready for my downstroke. And Tony says, press pause, Fee. And he says, check your shoulders, because they were doing this. I said, Tony, I think they're a little bit tense. Now, I don't know if you're like me, but I tend to hold my shoulders where I hold my tension. Sometimes the back. I've noticed a lot of people holding the jaw. Others will kind of have them, I don't know, in the hips or their knees or their feet. So the life lesson here is check your body and ask yourself, where am I holding tension right now? Where am I holding tension? But here's the really key thing. Take it one step further. Check your mind and ask yourself, where am I holding tension in my mind right now? That is the thing we forget to check. And you will find this tension in your mind, and that tension might be a block, it might be a limiting belief, it might be a negative thought. Check for the tension in your mind. So Tony showed me this great exercise, and it was to teach me to relax my shoulders, to open up my chest. And I love the exercise so much. I made a YouTube video of it without a sword or anything, but I made a YouTube video of it. So if you want to check it out, I'll put a link up for YouTube in the chat, or just send me a message and I'll flick the link over to you. But he sent me all this. So anyway, so I've got my chest opened up here. And I'm ready now to bring the sword back up because I've learned how to relax my shoulders. So he says, okay, Fee, bring your sword up. So I bring my sword up. He said, oh, press pause. I said, press pause. He said, what are you thinking about? Now, I got quite clever by now because I know he wants me to think about the tip. So I said, well, Tony, I'm thinking about the tip. I'm moving from the tip. And he said, yeah, that's very good. Very good. But I want you to use your imagination. Use your imagination. I thought, oh man, okay, I've got to use my imagination. And in fact, I have a vocal coach and she says exactly the same thing. She said, Fiona, don't do it, just think about it. And here's the thing, isn't it, in life? So often we're running around doing stuff instead of really thinking about it and imagining it and making it as big and incredible as it can be and being super creative with it. So I made a podcast, and in the podcast, it's called 5 Steps to Motivation. And part of that, I talk about dumb goal setting. And in dumb goal setting, you can go wild with your imagination. So I imagine there's somebody standing behind me, and I imagine they're in silk pajamas. Have you seen the movie The Bodyguard? It's Kevin Costner, and at one point he throws a silken scarf in the air and he cuts it with his sword. And he just cuts in two. So I imagine the tip of my sword starting the movement, and it's cutting this person. They're very buff under their pajamas. It's cutting off their pajamas. It's cutting them with a tip just up the front here, and they have to tip their head back, and they get this little nick on their chin. And when I do that, the cut is so much smoother. I'm like, wow, this is incredible. There's not much space here to do it. So yeah, I can't. But anyway, so I do my cut. I'm using my imagination. And I keep going because he doesn't say press pause. So I keep going despite the ceiling fan. I keep going. Done it. I've finally done a full cut. And Tony says, press pause. He said, Fee, what were you doing with your breath? Now, I have done martial arts for many, many years. And if there's one thing I know, it's that you breathe out on the cut. So I said, Tony, I breathed out. And he said, yes, you did. You did. But he said, you didn't breathe out of the end of your sword. He said, you must project your intention out of the end of the sword, and that starts with the breath. So use the breath to project your intention. And it's funny because in life I do it. I think, okay, I'm going into a meeting now. What message do I want to give everyone else? What intention do I have for this? What am I going to get across to them? And what is my body saying about my intention? And then in the meeting, and you can do this too, you can press pause at some point during the meeting and just check, what is my intention right now? What am I projecting to this person in front of me? So there you go. Those are all the lessons from a sword. There's quite a lot there. We're zooming towards 20 minutes though. Do we have time to recap on the lessons, or are we tight on time?
No, I think we should just recap. I've just written them down, but it would be good for you just to go over them.
There are a lot. There are a lot. So first of all, I pushed down, and that was remembering that the smallest action can be the start of something big. The second one, actually I'll take them out of order because it'll be easier. No, I'll take them in order. The second one was to begin with the end in mind. Stephen Covey, yeah, 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. Begin with the end in mind. Remember, don't just think to the middle. Really, are you really thinking to the end of what you're doing? Then I had to use my body to lift the sword, which meant I had to change the way that I moved. So look at the way you're doing things and ask yourself, how might I do this differently? How might I do this differently? Checking for tension. We've got the physical tension, but also the mental tension. Where am I holding tension in my mind right now? Using the imagination. I have a person with the PJs that I'm cutting off. It makes such a difference because I'm cutting right from the beginning. I'm not just lifting a sword anymore when I cut. There's a cut all the way behind me. It doesn't just start from here now. So use your imagination as much as you can. And then there's no space whatsoever here. And then your breath. Do you remember I used my breath to breathe out the end of the sword? And what that's really about is setting an intention. Set the intention before you act, and check yourself. Press pause while you're acting and just check your intention again and ask yourself, what are you projecting to the person or the people who are in front of you? And an umbrella that lies across all of this, you will have noticed the theme there, is press pause. We run around so frantically, you know, that it's so important to just stop and take stock of where we're at. And so I am currently offering some press pause for clarity sessions. It's a 1-hour session. It's free. It's telephone based, so it's COVID friendly. And it's an opportunity to just stop and take a look at, where are you? Where do you want to go to? What might be stopping you from getting there, and what on earth can you do about it? So I've got 3 of those sessions next week. If you like one, please do just flick me a text and we'll tee that up for you. And so to finish, I would like to leave you with something actually that my first driving, and fortunately only driving instructor said to me. He said, you cannot steer a parked car. You've got to get moving to be successful. Thank you very much.
That's cool. Thank you. Okay, any questions for Fiona? Marcel, are you there? Are you going to come back? You probably just hiding.
I just muted it. Yes, I'm there. Wonderful.
So have we got any questions for Fi?
Can't wait for replaying the presentation because I've already got my sword.
Very good. Fiona, now when you said with this sword, how do you use it now in your you do some training workshops, things like that? So what you showed us today, you implement in your training workshops?
Look, it really depends what people need and what they want. It's really fun, isn't it, to take things that you wouldn't usually play with and to use those things to get you thinking differently. So, you know, sometimes we'll put in actual techniques from martial arts. A lot of stance work, you know, there's the power posture that's very, very popular, but then seeing how you can then add all sorts of mindset tricks on top of some of those traditional kind of things that are already out there.
Fantastic. Any questions from the floor? I'm stopping the video at the moment. Thank you very much.